Hello everybody, here we are with Fruit Trees. Yes, another fruitful day and a wonderful time. We're back at one of our favorite places, Sleepy Lizard Avocado Farm. This is Tom, and we're going to be talking more about avocados. And you know, avocados is one of my favorite foods, especially as a raw food vegan. I love avocados. It's such an important part of my diet. And a lot of times when I'm traveling, I see people tell me they have an avocado tree, and I go look at that tree, and I'm like, what variety is it? And they look at me like I'm asking them to do Rubik's Cube or something. And I'm like, they're like, what do you mean, what variety? I'm like, well, where'd you get this from? They say all proudly and all happy, well, we took a seed and we planted it, and now it's a tree. And I asked them if they had any avocados yet, and sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't, but I said, here's what I suggest, and here's the mistake you made. And this is why I'm making this video, so you don't make that same mistake. An avocado from a seed to get avocados takes a good amount of time. And you don't want to wait a good amount of time and not know what you're getting, right? So you want to know best what you're getting. So the best way to do that is something called grafting. It's not difficult to do. It's not as complicated as it seems. And Tom here on his website is probably one of the most best instructional websites of how to graft avocados. And I highly recommend you see it. He has more extensive videos about how to graft. So if he's prepared, maybe he'll show us today. I don't know if he's prepared, but at least show us some varieties that are grafted. So tell us, do you have the tools today to do something like that?
I do, yeah.
All right,
yeah.
So we'll do a graft today. He'll show you how to do it, but tell us what I just said. How many people do you know that just plant a seed and think they're going to get great avocados?
Most people, and it makes perfect sense that you would, right? I mean, you eat something, you get a seed, whether it's a tomato, a cucumber, a watermelon, whatever, you think I should just plant that and be able to get what I just ate. But that's not how nature works, and a lot of people are surprised by that. But then if you think about it, if you think of like a mom and a dad, the same two parents who have 3 children, the 3 children are all different, right? They're all unique, and none of them are exact clones of either the mother or the father. They're the combination of the DNA. And that's the same thing that happens with these seeds, right? This little seed here that's just starting to sprout contains the DNA from the mother tree and the father tree, or the 2 trees that were used to pollinate this particular seed. So when this grows, we don't know what it's going to grow into, because just like a person, it's a unique combination of DNA, and we don't know. As farmers, that's not good for us, because one thing we know for sure is when they're grown from seed, it takes anywhere 10, 12, 15, sometimes even 20 years to give us fruit in the first place. As a farmer, you don't want to wait that long. Even as a backyard grower, you don't want to wait that long. Who lives in their house for 20 years nowadays?
What's the shortest amount of time that you've heard of somebody getting an avocado from a seed, and what's the longest amount of time?
Confirmed 10 years. I have people tell me 3, 4 years all the time, but then when I ask probing questions, they'll say, oh, I got 200, and I'm like, you didn't get 200 fruit off of a 3-year-old.
So another advantage of grafting is it makes fruit sooner as well.
Makes fruit sooner, and you know exactly the fruit you're going to get.
What's really cool about this is when you get a big avocado tree, you can put more than one variety on the tree.
That's right.
So that's another cool thing.
Yep.
So what would they call that? An adopted tree or what?
Well, I've heard it in citrus. People call it a fruit salad tree.
A fruit salad.
Yeah.
Fruit cocktail
or a fruit cocktail tree. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So grafting is so great and wonderful. Now, I know with mangoes, some seeds or some varieties will fruit identical and some won't. You just have to know which type of seed it is. With avocados, is there any that's true?
No.
Okay, so none with avocados.
No avocado seeds grow true. Now look, you might plant it and get a seed very similar. Get a fruit very similar to the seed that the fruit came from.
The thing is,
but you might, and it takes over a decade to find out. Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's different ways to plant avocados, and he talks about them on his YouTube channel. I'll put the link below, and that's wonderful because he tells different ways to get a starter that you can graft onto.
Right.
Now, you can go through all the trouble of grafting. If you have a lot of land, it might be beneficial to learn. But if you just want an avocado tree, just contact him and his website. They have trees for sale. It's amazing and easy and simple, and you're on your way. And so tell everybody about grafting, what they're looking for, or how to do it if they decide to do it.
Okay, well, so here we have a seed, and it's starting to sprout, right? So then this one here is a better example. I just saw it, okay. So I just cut this the other day for a video. So this one's a little bit of a thicker. This one's actually of a size and age we can graft.
How long and old is this one?
Oh,
the seed.
4 months.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 months old. And this was just a fruit I ate, and I stuck it on a plate in my kitchen and stuck it in this dirt.
Is there any particular seed that you plant? Like when you taste an avocado, you say, I got to plant this one because you're grafting it? Or do you look for particular rootstock? Or do you just, even if you go to the store and buy a Haas, you just plant it? It doesn't matter.
I mean, I will, but the Haas, that one I tend to avoid because it's such a small seed. Now, even though every single seed is going to give me a unique rootstock because of what I just said about DNA, I've got a variety out there called Catalina, which gives me this huge seed. And it just grows a bigger stem and bigger roots most of the time. So I lean towards the Catalina, and the Lula is also just a nice big chunk of a seed. And so I like to start my trees with those. But I'll also use the Monroes and the Choquette. The Haas I tend not to because it's just such a small seed.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the size of the seed, to some degree, will determine how quick and thick the stem's going to
Yeah, and you want a nice solid root structure and a nice thick stem. So I already cut this for a previous video, but this was a stem with a couple of leaves coming out of it, so snip.
This is an avocado.
This is an avocado seedling, okay? And then we take a blade. Now there's knives for this, but I just use a razor blade.
Your razor blade, when you're grafting, razor blade, it's dangerous when you first learn to graft, but as you get a little into grafting, it is the best thing to
Yeah,
use.
I agree. And then I just make a little cut, a little bit off center. Just a slit right down the stem. Like that. Okay. And we come over. Now normally we'd go out into the grove and cut from one of my trees, but they're all flowering, Paul. So
Okay, so that's another thing. The budwood, or the piece that you're going to put on top of this, you would get from an existing tree. But there is an ideal time to get them from the tree, and when they're flowering, it's not the ideal time, which is right now. So that's another thing, the selection of the budwood, not just the variety of when it's picked.
Yeah.
And that's why you want somebody with experience to know the best chance of this, what they call is taking or being successful, is by knowing when it's best to pick and the variety and when it's not best to pick. So another thing I'll mention while Tom's
here I can
getting that. Oh, that
yeah,
here.
Oh, so this one actually, an example. So this I wouldn't pick because look, the end is already pushed through. This one, on the other hand, you see that the end of this one is already grown, right? But this one too, right? But this one here, look, it's just a little horn. It hasn't grown out yet. Yep, right there. It hasn't pushed through. So this one I can cut.
Okay.
Okay, and then I just prep it.
So he's taking the leaves off. Do you take all the leaves off?
I take all the leaves off, yeah.
Okay.
I've seen some people don't. I do.
Yeah, and let me tell you, what he cut with here, correct me, because I don't know with this. I know with mangoes, after you cut any tree, just because of funguses and disease, you want to wash them before you cut another tree.
That's true.
Is it
Yeah.
the same thing with avocados?
Yeah, I mean, no. Well, I would wash them at the end of a session.
Okay.
Right? But I'm not real particular either. And when we do a session here, we're doing like 100 or 200.
Okay.
So we're just going to crank through them. Boom, 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 boom. Wash everything off for the next time. But yeah, like especially if you were going to graft a few mangoes and then graft a few avocados, definitely clean them up. But no, I'm not that particular.
Okay,
about
so
it.
here he took all the leaves off. Let's show him. So he took all the leaves, and this is the size. And it's pretty thick. It's not too flimsy here.
Right.
So that's not a flower coming out.
No, that's
okay.
like a horn of new leaf growth. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So
yeah, this one, I'm surprised it didn't flower. It's old enough to flower, but it didn't flower this year. even though
now
it's still in the
that's a
pot.
graft, right?
That's a grafted tree, and here's the graft. Yeah,
So what was the rootstock on that one?
probably Lula or Walden.
And then you put Donnie on top of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if anyone's confused out there, you can take a budwood off an existing graft.
Yeah.
So just let
Yep.
them know, okay?
Yep. So then we cut a little wedge in these guys so that we can open up for the, to create the little wound here that's going to heal with the seedling. Okay, so that, and then we're going to stick it right in our little seedling here. And then we want to match at least one side. So you want, if it doesn't fit flush on both sides, you want to at least match on one side like this. And then we'll wrap it up with the tape.
And just again, so people know, when you say one side, you're talking about one side of this part, not necessarily one side of
one side of each. One side of the
now,
cutting.
What if this is too much bigger than this?
If this was wider, then there'd be some sticking out of one side.
Is that okay?
This one, yeah, that's as long as you match. Long as you match one side flush.
Got you.
So this is grafting tape, and we stretch it out a little first before we use it. It's got some elasticity, but it'll snap. And this you can get at Home Depot or any garden center. Just literally just ask for grafting tape. It's that's what it's made for. That's what its function is. And we just wrap.
Is there a particular name for this type of grafting?
This is called a cleft graft.
Cleft graft.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's several different ways to graft. This one is, I have found, for beginners, and just very easy and successful.
Yeah, and then to tie it off, you can kind of stretch it and twist and turn it into more like a string. It'll make it stronger. And then we just come around and tie it off. There you have it.
There you go. And then it's done. It's that simple. Yeah, so now how long before you would take it out of the pot? Can you put it in the ground like this? Or what
No.
would you do?
So then you want to wait and see if it succeeded. So, for example, that one is just starting to succeed. It's just, now look at this, the rootstock is trying to grow also. But this guy here is just starting to push through. This one has a lot more success. This one's very far along.
Now, when you talk about push through, how far up did you go on that? Because on some, like when I wrapped the mangoes, you wrap the top.
Yes, and this time around for this batch, we also used a grafting tape called parafilm. It's different than this stuff. This I will take off once the graft takes after a few months. We can go around this with parafilm, and you don't take it off. The tree will just grow through it when the graft succeeds. But I just don't have any with me today.
So as you're doing this, it's okay to leave the top exposed, and it could still take.
Yeah.
Okay.
We leave them open.
So which tape do you prefer to use, this one or the parafilm?
No, you use both. You would use this to graft to actually make the connection. The parafilm we would just wrap the top with.
Great. Okay.
I suppose you could use the parafilm to go around this also, and then you wouldn't have to worry about taking it off. The tree would just grow through it.
Yeah, and when do you take it off? After you start seeing it grow on the top?
Not only after you, like once I see this, maybe a month or two, I'll leave this on. This is the parafilm, and then this here I'll take off a month or two later, and then, then you just kind of have this sort of open spot where the graft goes. Well, here's an example, Paul, too. Look at this. This cutting was wider than the stem it went into, so one side bulged out and the other side caught. You know what I mean? And then eventually they heal to the point that the untrained eye isn't even going to see it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that takes a few months. Now, let me see if I could find one that hasn't, or looks like it's not going to take. So look at that guy's pushing through. He's pushing through. He's coming along. He's just starting. This one here, let's see. Don't see anything. See, this again is the seedling trying to survive. Yeah, I don't. Oh, maybe a little bit. But what'll happen when they start to fail is you'll just see them. They turn brown and then black.
Sure.
And within a month.
Now, another thing to mention is these are grafts from the rootstock. Another way you can graft is you can graft onto the actual tree. So if you have a tree that you want to change the variety or add a second variety, you would either cut that branch back or even cut the whole tree down and wait till a new one grows. And that's another way to graft. That's grafting on the tree.
Yeah. exactly. Yeah, and that's how we do these loquats right here next to the shade house. That's the preferred way for the loquat. And then just to give you an idea, you were asking me about this seed. Look at this. I mean, look at the size of that. I mean, even by the standard of seeds we get out of avocados here in Florida, that's a monster, you know. And so that, you know, that's, like I said, that's probably a Walton seed that they started with.
Now, is it better when you graft onto the tree, cutting the tree down to a stump and wait for new growth to happen, or just grafting onto an existing?
Cutting it and letting a new one. Yeah, you prep it a few months ahead of time, then you come and graft onto the already existing tree. I can show you that if you want.
Yeah, show us like what something, if you have any examples of what to look out for when you graft.
Yeah, and then one other thing, you may find this interesting, I'm not sure, but this graft, for example, right? If you see how that's cut, this was actually clipped back, and we cut several cuttings from the same branch. So this was like 3 clips.
So this was in the middle of the branch.
Yeah, this was in the middle. Yeah,
wow.
So you can even take from the middle and look, it's starting to succeed.
Wow.
Yeah. But I can show you an example of how we prep a mature tree, also for grafting, if you want to see that.
Sure. I have a tree at home. It was a winter Mexican, and the avocados weren't ripening evenly.
Yeah.
So I just cut it down to its stump, and it's starting to grow back.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to put a new variety onto that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, when you cut that back, is it necessary, does it matter either way if you leave some of the old branches that are flowering, or you should cut them all?
I try to leave one branch with leaves, because it's a big tree, so I don't want to deny it the ability to conduct photosynthesis and create energy and stuff like that. So what I do and what I tell people is, if you're going to graft an already existing tree, a mature tree, leave one branch with leaves, graft a few of the new shoots, let the ones that succeed grow, then go back and cut the other one off.
If you want it, you could still leave that.
You can leave it. But you still have to prune it, because Mother Nature's going to want to make something dominant.
Sure.
And as you can see, I mean, look, this graft is healing and just pushing through. But going from the seedling, Mother Nature's already putting out that little branch and that little branch. So the seedling can become dominant, and then eventually, even if your graft takes, it could die off. So in the case where you graft to an already existing tree, or like we talked about earlier, graft multiple varieties, you want to prune judiciously so you get even growth of everything, or something will take over.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, show us in the field there some of the trees to graft onto.
All right. So here's an avocado tree. This grew from seed. This section of my property used to be all woods. You couldn't even see from here to that oak tree. It was just thick with woods. But they were nice trees, pines and stuff like that, so I didn't want to come in and cut them down, although I'd rather fruit-bearing trees. Somewhere along the line, a squirrel or something must have brought a seed out. And it's easy to tell this is not a grafted tree, because it just grew straight like a telephone pole, straight up. The fruit that this would give me tasted bland. Well, it didn't taste bad, but it didn't knock your socks off. It gave a very beautiful fruit, a pear-shaped, nice, shiny skin, you know. And one year I didn't get any, and one year I got 100. The next year I got 200. The next year I got exactly 1. I got exactly 1 fruit off of it. Then it stopped giving me fruit. Then the hurricane hit and knocked everything down here. And so what I've decided to do this year is stump it, and this will eventually start to put out new green growth. Now this hasn't done it yet, but I have an example of what that would look like on a mango tree. We can use our imaginations.
Sure.
Okay, come on, we'll go look at this mango over here. So this here is what that would look like. So you see that new green growth right there. Now, with this tree, this also went down in the hurricane, the same hurricane. So you see we cut it and propped it back up. The problem is, since this used to be the dominant tree along the fence line here. Well, when this guy went down and we stood him back up, it gave everything else here room to grow and get in the way. And this guy's been stunted for the last 3 years. So I finally bit the bullet and had a guy come in and really just open me up here. And as you can see, just the sunlight alone is already drawing this tree this way. And it's fruiting, it's flowering like crazy. You see the flowers. And so what I'll do, this gives me fruit in September. It's a later variety mango. And then once I pick the last fruit, I'll kind of clean it up so it isn't like, going this way anymore. And I'll encourage it to grow broad and round again. you know.
Sure.
And then while they were in here, Paul, last time you were here, I had my Lula. It's gone now.
Oh.
But this was like our backyard sort of shade tree in addition to, you know, giving us food. And I mean, I let it grow huge, way larger than you'd ever grow it in the Grove. And it got infected with laurel wilt, and I couldn't save it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know how big your property is, and many of the trees were here before you got here.
Correct.
And you planted a good amount as well?
Yes.
Okay. What's the closest you've gotten away with planting 2 avocado trees, or what would you recommend when it comes to that?
Well, the avocados I've only planted in the Grove, and I just go with how that Grove was planted, which was 16 by 16.
Okay.
I have a section of mango, sapodilla, and mamey that I put them 12 feet apart, and I'm going to keep them small. I'm not worried about getting a ton of fruit off of each one. I'm more interested in the variety, also the ability to harvest the budwood and
So
graft
whoever
more.
was here many years ago before you planted the avocado grove with 16 by 16 apart.
Yes, yes.
So from these mature trees that are growing now, do you feel that's a good distance, or do you feel it was too close?
Well, I never questioned it. Then I watched your video with Dr. Crane recently,
Yes.
and it got me thinking about 2 things. Number one, I learned from watching that video that the initial recommendation was 25 by 25. I had no idea. In fact, until I've never even seen a grove planted that sparsely. And then he mentioned even cutting the middle route and having 50 feet in between them. So that got me to thinking. And then the other thing, he talked about how when he tops them, I top mine at 18 feet every time I top them. And I learned something from your video with him where he'll do 13, 16, 14 so that the saw blades aren't cutting the same joints every time. So I'm going to start doing that going forward now. That was my takeaway from your video.
Yeah,
so
I've
thank you
seen
for that.
somebody on a video. I went to their house. They had avocados 5 in one hole.
Yeah.
And they had all the avocados right next to each other, and the avocados were fruiting just fine.
Yeah.
I take it they weren't very old or big trees, but
Yeah.
in the meantime, he was able to get away with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the thing you got to, like, I think the difference between me and a person like that or a person like you, my focus has been more like commercial, designing my system to be commercially viable and commercially efficient, as opposed to like the sort of like botanist side of it. You know what I mean? Like growing variety and wanting different tasting mangoes and stuff like that. I've only recently started thinking about that kind of stuff. You know,
And how often do you water your trees, your avocado trees?
in the summer every day because it rains every day, and then now in the dry season, if I don't get an inch of water over the 3-day period, I water on the 4th day.
Okay, and you have irrigation watering it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
wonderful.
Yep. Big diesel pump. Yep.
Very
Yep.
good. And what kind of fertilizer do you use?
6-6-6 blend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's does anyone want to give you comments about
All the
this?
time. All the time.
I wasn't gonna say.
That's why I emphasize the dash. You know,
Yeah.
it just makes it sound a little different.
Yeah. But now, what's the difference between that versus a 7-7-7 or a 5-5-5?
Okay, that's the ratio of the active ingredients: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium.
Right.
I don't know in what order.
Yeah.
6-6. You know, but like you get like a 3-4-12, or
Sure.
they're 2-8-12. All these. So in that case, you'd have 6 units of nitrogen, 6 units of phosphorus, 6 units of potassium, and 82 units of filler in the
So
in the
if
batch.
it's more, then it'd be less filler versus less, it'd be more filler.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what you found to work best for your trees.
Yes.
And how often do you fertilize?
That's for my avocado trees. I have
Yeah.
a different blend for mango, which I can't remember. And then I use a completely different blend for the bananas. Sorry, those bananas are a mess because of the freeze. My bananas were the only things that didn't survive the freeze of a month ago. Everything else came out just
How
fine.
often do you fertilize the trees?
3 times a year.
3 times a year.
3 times a year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, everybody. I'm going to put Tom's contact information below the video. His YouTube channel is amazing. If you want to learn out about avocados, check out his YouTube channel. If you want to contact him when avocados are in season here in South Florida, he sells them. He sells priority mail boxes, and he'll send them right out to you. It's just amazing that you can eat real avocados, skipping the middleman, the grocery and all that, and get them right from the farm. A wonderful idea. So check out his website. Thank you so much for being on the show again.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you, man.
I
All
love
right.
having you here.
All right. Have a great day, everybody, and keep growing.